Hi everyone, this is Marlene with Miami Ghost Chronicles, and I want to welcome you to another episode of Stories of the Supernatural. If you're watching it on the internet or listening to a podcast version of the show, make sure to subscribe so that you get notified when a new show is released. And if you'd like to find links to videos or MP3 files, just go to miamighostchronicles.com, and you can also submit any eerie experiences you've had at the Submit Your Story tab. Also, hook up with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, where you can find information not only about new shows, but also about monthly free merchandise giveaways. So get comfortable, enjoy this new episode, and just imagine it's a dark and stormy night where not a creature is stirring, not even a mouse. And if a creature is stirring, you hope it's a mouse. Hi everybody, this is Marlene from Miami Ghost Chronicles, Stories of the Supernatural. How is everybody doing today? Of course, I'm going to put my 2 cents worth in about the weather, because you all know that me living in Miami, I have my own weird weather thing going on that you only find here in South Florida, and believe it or not, it's in the 40s. And it's really funny because with a guest that I want to bring on in a second, who lives further up north, I was telling him that I'm a winter wimp, because it's like, oh my God, you know, I even get out of bed and I drag my my blanket with me. So yes, it's like one of those things. But anyway, let's get to the good part. The good part is about who my guest is today, and I'm super excited. This gentleman, he goes by the name of Arizona Tramp, but I'm going to call him by his first name, Paul. And he is the host of Swamp Gas on Black Swamp Digital Radio, which is WFROG 94.3. And he has shows about paranormal, supernatural, unexplained, and his shows, they go on Wednesdays at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Now, right now, he lives outside of Toledo, Ohio, which AKA is the Black Swamp. And this is, of course, where he gets the title of his radio station and his radio show, which is titled Swamp Gas. Arizona Tramp is his DJ name. Now, he's been involved with internet radio. In other words, he's a pioneer since 1998. He's also written a novel called Ancients of Days Lies Hidden Within Us. And he's also a singer, a songwriter, a composer, a Renaissance man. But anyway, let me get Paul on. How are you doing today, Paul?
Oh, I'm just fine. I hope you are well. What an intro.
Of course, it's all about you. Absolutely. Anyway, Paul, I'm so thrilled to be interviewing you. But we're going to start because, like, I'm sure, and we've discussed this before, you've heard a multitude of different stories and experiences from other people because of your show. But
Oh, yeah.
did you ever have your own paranormal experience as a kid, as an adult? How did you get interested in this?
Oh, as a kid,
Well,
I
sometimes some people they don't get into it till they're an adult, and others will tell you, "Hey, basically, I was seeing ghosts out of the cradle." So, what happened with
I
you?
had lots of paranormal experiences as a kid.
Really, tell me about it.
Damned if I can remember any of them right now, except for the only thing that comes to mind at the moment was experience as a kid at the camp store way
Really?
back in the day. I think I was 13 or something, and we walked past this shed that's supposed to be haunted, or they everybody said it was haunted or something. And we looked in, me and a friend of mine looked in there, and there was this beehive and all these bees, and they started chasing us. And so we
Wow.
ran. We were telling everybody to run for their life, and lo and behold, there was no bees. And we even went back and we looked. I got everybody to look inside this place, and there was no bees there. There was no nest there. There was nothing. So
Wow. And when you said that camp, I had flashes of Friday the 13th. It was like this summer camp. I was like, oh, a lot of stuff happens at summer camps. You know, it's like, oh, something came out of the lake, or yeah,
what happened at
too
summer
much horror
camps?
movies. But yeah, and also you mentioned that I know you said you had several that you can't explain, and I was gonna say, sometimes people they don't have them like in early childhood, but then when you go into adolescence, which sometimes there's a correlation between adolescence, poltergeist. That's sometimes also when people start having their own unusual experiences. And I myself had, which when it happened, and of course you're a teenager, you don't pay attention to that stuff because you've got other stuff going on. But
Yeah.
then later on, you think back and you go, "Wait a minute, that was what? I think that was that." Uh, it's very seldom, unless it's really horrific and in your face, that when you're a teenager, you really understand what you're witnessing. Doesn't make sense, but you just keep on doing whatever you're doing because who
Right.
wants to think about that? And I tell everybody when I was like, I want to say maybe 15, 16, something like that, 14, 15. This was once upon a time, when phones were on a cord and used to hang on a wall like a landline. We used to have two in the house. One was in the kitchen, one was in my mom's bedroom right next to her on her nightstand. So I had a little boyfriend and he was a bus boy and he lived across town. So we would have to talk after I got home like midnight. And I had those super long extra cords, that you could stretch for miles from the phone base.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember
And
those.
I would sit like in the hallway out of the kitchen because this is where the other phone was at. And I would just talk to him. And, all the lights were off. I would just have like a hall light on and, stupid stuff that you talk about for hours when you think back about it. But anyway, a couple of times this was around the winter. And we used to have, this was this house that we used to live in. It really didn't have any trees in the yard per se. It had like a big pine tree in the front, but it wasn't like bushy or anything. And it had a chain link fence, and it had the door for where you came up the sidewalk, and then the double ones that you would open if you wanted to put your car into the carport. It was like an older home. And I remember being out there again. This is like usually 1 in the morning, so it's really super super quiet. And I remember a couple of times I would hear like the jingle of that chain link fence, and this is, by the way, for me to pay attention to when you're talking to somebody on the phone at that age, it takes a lot. And I remember the first couple of times thinking, it's a cat. Even though, I didn't have a cat, but you're always thinking a neighborhood cat jumping on it. Later on, I realized it would have to be a huge cat to make that chain, because the one that I would hear rattle would be the double ones that you open to put your car in.
Right.
And then a couple of times, I distinctly heard um, somebody walking around the grass, crunching. When it crunches like this.
Yeah.
And again, the first few times, because I didn't want to pay attention, I thought a cat. But then it was like, man, those are footsteps. Obviously, I didn't think it was a ghost. I thought I had somebody out in the yard. And I like hung up. I told him, oh, I gotta hang up. He's like, no, 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 don't hang up. And I'm thinking, you're across town. What are you gonna do? I power launched myself on top of my poor mom, who's sleeping, telling her, oh my God, there's somebody in the yard. There's somebody in the yard. She's like wigged out totally. So we turn off all the lights and we're going through all the windows, looking out into this dark yard. The only thing you can see is maybe like porch lights from the houses around, but that's it. There's nobody. And by the way, you never hear anybody running off. It's not like, oh, I hear steps and then you hear crunch, 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 somebody disappearing. This happened to me a couple of times, more than once. And what's really funny about this is I grew up in that neighborhood and we moved away, and then the couple, it was an older couple who lived there with their daughter, and their daughter grew up. The dad passed away, and then this older lady rented the house out, and it was right across the street from my grandmother's house. And I mean, in other words, I was very familiar with this neighborhood. I was living there since I was 3 years old, and there was no peeping Tom. And I mean, I had other experiences, but like I said, a lot of times you don't realize what it is till you look back. I personally think, thinking back because of other experiences that I had there, that I think it was the husband or the older man that used to live there with his wife. That basically this was when people would stay put in their houses, and he was just doing his thing. That's the only thing I can think of, because more than once I did that. I hear somebody walking outside on the grass at night. Again, there's no trees. If you looked out the window, there's nothing for anybody to hide in.
Yeah.
And nobody there. It would just stop. And it would always be like around the outskirts of the house. And yeah, that was my short little ghost story, as far as stuff that happens to you in adolescence that not till you're older do you go, hey, that was weird.
If people haven't heard the intro to my show, which I'm starting a new show, but it's from a dark basement in a haunted dwelling somewhere in the Black Swamp of Northwest Ohio. I live in a haunted house.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, I live in a haunted house. there was two guys that were married to the lady that lived here. They died at separate times. She was married at separate times with these guys, but they died here and they stayed here and they waited till she passed and then they left. But this one guy that lived here would follow me all over the property. He used to like to do things like turn up the refrigerator. He would open the refrigerator door after you shut it. He'd open it just after you shut it, and you have to go back behind yourself and shut the thing again and bitch about it. Or you turn the thermostat up and down. You know, that's what he did at first. And then he'd follow me into the shed, and he'd move my tools around. I'm using the tool that I need. He'd move it on the other side of the shed or something like that. And that was like really interesting. And that doesn't really go on too much anymore because they left. They took off when the lady that we bought the house from died. And she never did come back. She just left. And but your cat story, I got one that will amaze you.
Okay.
And, like, I was married to my ex-wife. We were together. We were living in Detroit in like '92. Well, one night we got into it, so I hopped in the van and I spent the night in a grocery store parking lot, which is not the best thing to do in Detroit.
Hey, that was your Walmart parking lot back then.
I did it anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
But the thing is this little bitty kitten crawled up and going meow, 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 and I had to pull the engine cover off in order to get the cat out from inside where the engine is. And this scruffy little cat that looks like it hadn't eaten and is meow, meow all over the place. This cat followed me all over the country. Everywhere I ever went, this cat would show up.
Are you serious?
And the last place that I saw this kitten was when I was in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I haven't seen it since. But the first summer that we were here, and last summer, not this last summer, we've been here 3 years now. So it's the first 2 summers. We would hear this cat outside the window, but we could never find it, could never see it. I don't know if it was the same cat, but we'd hear a cat, and we don't have cats around here.
Okay.
We've got bald eagles and so on that live around here, and they will literally swoop down and pick up a cat and eat it. I mean,
I believe
if
it.
you've seen the talons on a bald eagle, you know what I'm talking about.
Yes,
They're very big animals, and they will pick up they'll pick up an animal. But
Yeah, no, I have the problem out here with hawks and chickens, but I know that if they're big enough, yeah, cat will do, especially a kitten.
Oh yeah, my buddy has little pugs, and he just had a litter. His dogs just had a litter of pugs, and he's going, I gotta get rid of these. I said, well, I'd take them, but it'd be eagle food.
Yeah.
Or hawk food.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Luckily, I don't have the birds of prey out at where I live at. They're only so big, and I got to worry about my chicks up to a certain size. Or I've got, those little, we're segueing off, but I've got these little bantam roosters that are really small. I lost a couple to hawks out here because of that. They can't carry it off, but they'll kill it if they're hungry enough. But
no, they'll kill it, get where it sits.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
I saw a hawk, well, not a hawk, an owl. I watched an owl one day swoop down, and it was only a baby owl. It was only like half the size it's supposed to be when it's an adult, and it tried to get a squirrel, and that squirrel fought it off.
Yeah.
It was like, wow, you only see this stuff on Nature, on PBS, and it's like I'm sitting in my backyard watching this. This is cool.
Yeah. No, I have, for that reason, because my chickens are free ranging, and I've got a couple of roosters, but I bought in what's called a fighting rooster, which they're huge. He's like big, and I brought him in for that alone because he'll attack whatever comes in this yard.
Yeah, people laugh when they say they get attacked by a chicken. But
yeah. Oh, no, let me tell you something. I had a like you said, a moment when it was like, man, it's like chicken drama out here. Chickens are aggressive.
They are. They're really aggressive.
Yeah, people don't understand it till you're in it. But yeah, but let me ask that thing about that kitten. So you're telling me the first time you had that experience was when you went out to that parking lot in Detroit, When you were in
In
Detroit?
92, and when I was in Baton Rouge, that was 2003.
Wow.
Yeah.
And was there any timing specifically when this would happen, or would it just be random?
Whenever I was alone, living by myself, I spent a year in my van
Okay.
living. When I was in Sedona, I decided to do a spiritual sabbatical type thing, and
Mm-hmm.
I lived a year in my van in the desert, literally.
Okay.
And this kitten would find, and a cat's not going to survive in the desert.
Of course not. And you
So
would be out
kitten,
there
what
hearing a cat?
kitten, kitten this kitten was something else, and he was like, whenever I was in distress, that cat would be there.
Wow.
But
And then what happened? It just stopped one
it
day?
is. Well, I have been in a relationship in the place that I'm living, and all that. I've been in relationships since '05, and I haven't um, needed it, I guess.
Okay, that's interesting. Because I was about to say, this sounds like it's tied into your, like your emotional state, and
Yeah,
that's
you are
very.
the first person to hear this story.
Oh my God, I'm thrilled. Thank you for sharing that, because I think that is a super interesting, because a lot of people, when they do the thing about the animal ghost, is usually what used to be a pet, and then they'll see it, blah 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 blah, and what's you're gonna this is talk about coincidences, which are synchronicities, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
I do another podcast called Nightshade Diary, where basically I read the stories. These are older stories, some of them are true, some of them are not. And I just
Oh,
finished
cool.
doing one a few days called The House of the Bloody Cat. And the story is exactly what you're detailing. The author said it was based out of the UK in supposedly a true story, but I'm not sure. And he retells the story of when he used to go to school. He had a teacher, a headmistress, who told this story about where she used to live as a child, where they was an older big manor house in the UK, and one of the wings they wouldn't use it because it was just too costly and things of this nature. And
Right.
but then when she was a kid, she would go exploring, and she goes one of the times that she goes out there, she sees a black cat, but it's all injured, it's like mangled, and she's like trying to pick it up, thinking, where did this come from? And it turns out it's not a real cat. But in her case, it turned out that every time that if she ever went into that wing and she would see the cat, it would basically like a harbinger of death. Something would happen. And later on, she says that they found out that somebody had abused and killed the cat that belonged to a child that lived there, blah 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 blah, etc. That's like the condensed version, but I think it's so interesting because I mean, I've read a lot of stories, but it has a lot to do, I think, what you're relating to, which is the sighting of an animal that might not necessarily have been your pet, based on what's going on in your life.
Oh, yeah.
Isn't it interesting? And in your case, you're like that. I mean, I could put on my psychotherapist hat and try to read a bunch of things into it, but basically, I imagine when you heard it the first time, you were like, I got to rescue. I've got a cat or a kitten somewhere
Well,
inside
yeah.
my.
Well, where did you come? Why are you up here in my engine? And it's like,
Yeah.
and my van was giving me crap. That's why I couldn't start it, or I would have like ended up driving with this cat,
Right.
up inside my motor. And it used to hide up at different times. It used to hide up in the wheel well, or it would hide up in the motor, or somehow it'd climb up by the battery under the hood, or I would just be parked there. Like I was, the last time I saw it, I was living at my Reiki master's
Okay.
house, and my van that I spent the year in, I was staying in the van because this house is too small. So I'm in the driveway, and I'm in my van, and all of a sudden the cat shows up.
And what did it look
I
like,
haven't seen this
Paul?
cat in 6 months. It was white and brown, and it was the size of an 8-week-old or 10-week-old
Yeah, like one of
kitten.
those little kitties. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was all like nappy and stuff,
Right.
and
Yeah. Like you could tell that it's. Yeah. I know exactly what you mean. Like it's not well cared for. In other words.
yeah, not real, like he lived out in the wild and hadn't seen anybody or had anybody be friendly to him in forever. I
Wow.
mean, But
That is
how,
such a neat
because
story.
I wouldn't take him with me, so how he would find me in a different part of the country, and I've been all over this damn country, is absolutely clueless to me. Unless it's a spirit guide taking physical form or
Could
something,
be. Sure.
you know.
Sure. I have heard of that. I have heard of that. Let me ask you, but just out of curiosity, do you know what or who your totem is? Your animal totem? I don't know if you ever.
Well, I'm pagan, so what comes to mind is Bast, Lady Bast.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And the other thing that correlates with that is that one of the nights I stayed in the desert down by a creek, on the other side of the creek, I'm doing my little ritual thing, and because it's full moon,
Mm-hmm.
and I was talking about how the goddess should give me a sign, and I hear this baby cry, and that's a mountain lion, and
Okay.
we had two. There was two at that time, and
Wow.
I'm going, okay, Bast, no, okay, I'm
Not
going,
that
I'm
big.
done. And the cat slept on the top of my van the whole night. You
Holy
could
crap.
see, we didn't have cell phones back then. I couldn't take pictures of the
Right. Yeah.
permits. I couldn't take pictures of because we didn't have that stuff to do that then. And me living in my van, I wouldn't have had it anyway. So
That is wow. Yeah, that does sound like it's your totem.
that kind of yeah. So it's like
Yes, absolutely.
awesome. I take everything with either a grain of salt or with my jaw hitting the floor. You know.
Sometimes, I mean, don't get me wrong. I understand the curiosity of trying to get things explained, but sometimes you can only take it that far and leave it at whatever it is. It is. It's like,
Well,
what do you?
yeah.
Let me ask
Well,
you, how does it? How did you feel? That's usually what I go by. How did you feel?
well, I knew who it was, but I also knew that I needed to get my ass inside the van.
Just in case, right?
Perfect love and perfect trust. The whole story with the snake and grandma, or the frog and the scorpion.
Right.
You know, the scorpion asks the frog, as the frog is carrying the scorpion on its back across the
Right.
creek. The
Mm-hmm.
scorpion stings the frog, and the frog says, "Why did you do that? I'm saving your life." He says, "Because I'm a scorpion."
Yeah, and you knew I was a scorpion.
Okay, so it's perfect love and perfect. It's a perfect love, perfect trust story. It's like things will be exactly what they are.
They will be true
Yeah.
to their nature.
And all right, if there's a cat on the other side of the creek that I know I am not going to be able to deal with, I need to get my butt in the van. I know who it is, but I need to get my butt in the van. If
Right.
she wants to talk to me through the door, that's fine.
Exactly. Exactly. Yes. Like I totally agree. I totally agree because I think sometimes people when they do the metaphysical stuff, they kind of lose sight of the reality of what's actually happening. Uh, and things like this is like, yeah, self-preservation is always at the top of my list, as much as possible under all circumstances.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. So you've had these
And,
mystical experiences, and you, like you said, you've had these. I take it that at this place where you live at, you did you ever catch on that after this lady died, it was when these occurrences either like stopped or just faded away or
well, they're not so frequent anymore.
okay.
I think I told you off air the story about the cell phone last night,
Yeah, but can
and
you say that again? Because for those people who I'm sure that this has happened to a lot of people, believe it or not, I think that happens more than people want to admit to.
well, yeah, all right. Oh well, last night I had a conversation with someone a little bit earlier who wanted me to come and save their butt, get them out of the situation again.
Okay.
And it's like, no, I'm not going to do that. And I left the computer. I went in. I laid down on the couch. The wife went to bed. The granddaughter's in bed. Uh, the wife's cell phone is in the bedroom. My cell phone is over on the other side of the TV, and the granddaughter's cell phone is dead. So I'm laying there on the couch, and I know where all the cell phones are, but I hear this doot, 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 and I can feel the vibration of this phone.
Okay.
And it's like, okay, well, who is this? I'm not even going to bother answering this. So it's like somebody called 3 different times, and you feel the vibration. Well, I go to grab the cell phone to see who called. I tore that couch apart. There's no cell phone.
Uh-huh. And it's
You
like
know,
until this day, from what you're saying, and no phone, nothing.
that's the
That's
kind of
happened to
things that
people.
happens to me. Yeah, I mean, so, and it's a daily occurrence. And so I'm used to it. I don't think it's any big deal. I don't get freaked out about it. I got
Hmm.
kind of freaked out, over the cell phone deal. That kind of did freak me out
Well,
because
and people don't realize that. Well, now it's cell phones because that's the kind of electronics that a lot of people have. But historically, there's a lot of people that have had metaphysical evidence tied into some type of electronic, whether it's the light switching on and off by themselves or sometimes electrical appliances burning out. It just so happens that the last thing are phones. But I've heard of people getting message, and I'm sure you've heard of it when there was only landlines, of people getting
yeah,
phone calls and
yep,
they would get either dead air or staticky or the voice of somebody they knew was deceased, or they would even sometimes have a conversation with somebody that they didn't know at that moment that that person had died, and then
right,
shortly thereafter they would get told, oh, by the way, no, that person died, and the time that they were speaking to him, that person had already passed on. So maybe somebody was trying to reach you from the other side.
well, the only thing I get is that it's a wake up call for something.
Yeah,
You know,
but
so if
that's
there's no cell phone under the pillow, how am I supposed to answer it?
right. That I think is like so. I would
I'm
probably,
supposed
knowing myself, I think I would have done
to,
exactly what you did, torn the sofa apart. Like, I gotta find this thing because there's something in here.
yeah. I'm supposed to be at this level at my point in life where you say, okay, you're calling me. What do you want? But it's like 20 degrees outside. I'm not going out to make circle tonight. It's just
Yeah,
not gonna happen.
exactly,
So
exactly. It's like the practical side of life. It's like, okay, whatever. It's like your timing is off on this one. But yeah, I
my
agree.
life.
Yeah,
So
I had a case one time where I had the family was saying that the grandmother of the family that had been deceased was trying to communicate with the grandson, and it was going through one of these phones that was dead, as in not connected. And they had even taken the batteries off, but it was still working. And that
yeah,
was, and this was when when people were just having the flip phone kind of things.
yeah, I remember those.
So
I never had one.
yeah, it was like the yeah we've yeah,
The
uh,
only reason I own a cell phone is in case I have to dial 911 for the granddaughter,
sure.
or because I want to use it for pictures.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only reason I have a phone. I could care less if I have a phone. If you want to get a hold of me, then get a hold of me on Skype or on Facebook or wherever you can get a hold of me on the internet because,
Sure.
you know,
Well, no, I've talked about it. And this is not a ghost thing, but this is you know, a now thing, which is I think people sometimes get so anxious and distraught and overwrought because your phone follows you everywhere, and everybody thinks that people should be instantly available all the time.
yeah, and I
Okay.
won't with that. I don't deal with that. I don't text. I find texting highly rude unless
Yeah.
you're at work. And if I text my wife at work, ask her a question, and she gets back to me when she can get back to me and it's free time, that's a good thing to do. That kind of texting, I like that.
Yeah.
But to sit there and especially, I can't. I don't want to deal with the fact that when my granddaughter is older, she's going to sit there at the dinner table and she's going to try to text somebody because then I'm going to have to like take that phone and throw it out the window because I'm not going to deal with it.
Of course, and that makes I think I didn't this last time I didn't even set up my voicemail. And you know why? Because just about everybody that needs to get a hold of me will find a way of like text me, email me or something or call me back. Uh so I didn't even set up my voicemail. I was forget this. That's Marlene protesting this. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. The electronics does play a part a lot in as far as when people are having a paranormal experiences, but then after that, because it sounds like have you ever gone to any places like visiting that you've walked in and you've either seen or had like that feeling like, I need to get out of here?
Oh, well, the Paranormal Convention here in Toledo last September, was it last September? Yeah, it's been that long. Uh, Toledo Ghost Hunter Society was there. And I hadn't seen them guys in a year, although I interviewed them several times on the show. So I went and I saw my buddy who's a DJ, and one of my people ended up being there too from my little clique, whatever you want to call that. And but we went up into the attic of what's called the Collingwood Arts Center that has been built since the end of the Revolutionary, or not revolution, the war between the states.
Right.
And there's a lot of paranormal activity that's in there. And well, we went up into the attic, and to make a long story short, I made the comment, okay, well, if there's any children up here in the attic, could you give us a sign? And there was nothing above us except for a roof, and it's slanted, and there's no children up there. All right, but you hear a ton of kids or whoever start beating their feet on the floor, and it sounds like it's coming from above us.
Right. Or it's just the roof.
But there's just a roof above us. You know, we got rid of the music because there was a food truck outside playing music, so we debunked that. Earlier that day, there was this dark entity that was running around, and I got rid of that. So there's my paranormal activity with another group. There you go. That's like the only time I've been ghost hunting, except for maybe up in Canada, where back when I was up in Canada in 2000, at the end of 2003, my buddy introduced me to ghost hunting. He's got this tape recorder, and so we went around and did that kind of stuff up there.
Coming from the time prior to all these gadgets and things that they've got now, cameras and meters and this and that, where the most you had, I tell everybody, I was doing this before there was digital photography. In other words, you had to pay to develop film.
Yeah.
So it could get very expensive. It wasn't like now that you can do 1,000 shots and then just, hey, when you don't capture anything, you don't capture anything. Which I think partly that it distracts from actually witnessing anything, and plus if you could, a lot of things can be manipulated. I want to put it nicely. Yeah, just to or any little things like, did you hear that? And it was like, yeah, I think it's a cricket. Or it's like, okay, for me it's like, this has got to be significant. That is like, this cannot possibly be anything else. Well,
RF meter. The RF meter is a joke. I don't care if the power's off in the house or not. You've got power lines right out front.
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, or something of that nature.
Yeah, there's a lot of these gadgets that it can give you a totally different reading because of the area, what it'll pull in. But a lot of people will swear by it. And again, everybody's got their own, way of doing stuff like that, research and things like that. But I think sometimes it looks great, it looks very, when you're putting all these cameras on all these things, but I've had experiences without benefit, all that stuff. And let me ask you, have you ever, just to segue a little bit off into another area of the paranormal, have you ever had any UFO sightings, Paul?
Oh, yeah. The one I always like to talk about is, I think it was 96, maybe it was 95. Okay. At that time, I'm living in the north end of Toledo, and I live on the third floor. It's one of the house that I own that I rent out to people. The top floor was my apartment. that I lived in. And you could look right across the river and you could see the oil refinery, you could see the high school, you could see everything from there. I mean, because it was on the third floor. And I've got the stereo on low, and I start doing one of my talks where I'm actually talking with someone who's claiming to be one of those people on the craft. And I said, well, that's fine. Go ahead and you show me. So he says, look out the window. There's 3 silver egg-shaped objects across the river on the east side of Toledo going towards the oil refinery, and then they all shoot straight up. Well, 15 minutes later, on the radio, the DJ says, oh, well, the lines are flooded. We've got tons of people. There's like 1,500 people in total, I guess, that saw this same thing. They all saw it. The DJ said every single one of us was high.
Are you kidding?
And played the song.
You know, I understand that not everybody that says they see something is really seeing something. I get it. But you're going to tell me that everybody that has a sighting all colluded the same actual experience or saw something because they were high? It's like, come on.
Yeah. Well, what was going on was I wasn't there. I didn't go that week. But they have, I was not too far from downtown. And downtown, they had what they called Party in the Park, where they had live entertainment and everybody would drink beer and blah, 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 blah. So he just put it off as everybody was drunk or high or something. And it's like, okay.
That's the mass hallucination there, right?
I called him up. I said, dude, I'm not down there and I'm not high.
Yeah, it's like, okay, so.
So, you know, he didn't air that, but.
No, I'm sure. Did you ever have any other experiences? Either sightings or.
As far as UFOs?
Yeah. Oh, if you have sightings of anything else, I'd like to hear about that too, but.
When I was in Sedona, I'm sitting there with my Reiki master.
Okay.
And went outside of the shop. It was nighttime. We went outside the shop after we did our little meditation session. Mm-hmm. We had this meditation deal going on, or he did, because he was working there. I wasn't. And these people would show up, and so it rained, sleeted, snowed, all within 15 minutes.
All right. In Arizona?
In Sedona, Arizona. Yeah, which it's kind of a high desert, so you do get snow. Okay. But I walk outside, light a cigarette, and right after all this, and I look up into the sky, and there was like this dropped out of hyperspace, and you could only see them for like a split second. But all of a sudden, they were there, and then they weren't there. But Sedona is so dark because they take pride in not having the lights on. So Sedona and Flagstaff it's so dark that you can't see your hand in front of your face unless there's something like a porch light or a street light or something. So when you look up to the sky, all you see is the Milky Way, and then all of a sudden, poof, you see these lights, and I'm guessing it's a fleet that dropped out of high. I don't know what the hell this was.
Okay.
That's what it looked like to me.
That's so interesting. Wow. Because I know, you know what's really funny? You know, I know that Sedona has got this reputation. A lot of people, metaphysical. There's a lot of metaphysical stuff going on there. But I've had 2 different reports of 2 different people that felt really ill when they basically were coming into Sedona. So much so they had to leave. Like they felt physically.
The energy of Sedona is really weird. Okay. After being there for the first month, I got really super sick. Okay. And it was my energies trying to adapt themselves to Sedona.
Okay.
And I had to learn how to ground in Sedona altogether again. Yeah. In the swamp energy, you automatically ground here. So you don't really have to teach yourself how to ground too much. Okay. When you go somewhere like there and you're in the high desert, you have to learn how to ground. if you don't know how to ground, your head's going to be in the clouds constantly.
Right.
You're going to feel like you just had half a bottle of whiskey all the time if you don't ground. And unless you, and you're used to it. You know, I could tell you some screwed up stories about too. There's a dark side of Sedona that I don't know if we should get into.
Why not? Let's go. Hang tight, everybody.
Well, you know, Sedona's like any other town. They do things that are not kosher. Okay. They do things like on the, I guess it's the west side of Sedona, you take 89A out towards Cottonwood. There's a spot that this resort that they went to go build. But it was right on Indian burial ground land. Well, they dug the bones up and they dropped them off at the Hopi Reservation. Okay. They blacktopped, they laid blacktop down before they built anything. So that the parking lot was there and stuff. And, well, they laid the blacktop down, and the next day they went back and it was gone. It looked like it did before. This happened twice. On the third time, they blacktopped it. The blacktop remained. But the whole point is that they dug those bones up and just dropped them off at the Hopi Reservation.
And it makes you wonder, did they really?
They didn't do anything. They dug them up and they took them to the Hopi Reservation.
For all you know, they might have left stuff behind anyway.
And of course, they left something behind. But
I know what you're saying. Though.
The way that they're disrespecting.
Exactly.
You know, everybody's a psychic in Sedona. Okay. Well, I have to call bullshit on that one. All right.
I get it.
The thing, the guy that was on the news about the sweat lodges where this guy killed some people. Well, I got into
the one that collapsed, or the people that basically they died because
I told him to knock his stuff off just before I left Sedona. I got into it with him and I told him. In fact, the police even showed up.
Okay.
I told him to knock his stuff off. He was going to kill people, and that's what he did.
Yeah.
All right, people move into Sedona, and 2 weeks later, they're a shaman, or they're a Reiki master. I'm sorry, but no.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. They think that, like you said, they took a course, they read a book, and now they're...
It's like, you know, my bitch back during the day was somebody would watch Charmed and then claim that they were a witch. Or they
watched that movie that came out.
They claimed that they were a witch. And no. What the hell's wrong with you? you know?
You know,
I mean...
I'm telling you, and there's a lot of people that they don't know what they're doing, and they conjure stuff. And then it's like, good luck on putting that genie back in the bottle.
I am, when I had my show, I had to be really careful about how I handled things because I would call bullshit all the time. And you can't do that and have a successful show. So I couldn't do that. But it's one of my favorite things that I like to do.
I was going to tell you, so you probably said, okay, this person might never come back on my show again, but here we go. No, but... what you mean? Well, and it happens. It happens.
Well, I had this one guy, and he goes by Lucky. And I had this one guy come on my show and talk about these trippy things that happened to him and all this kind of stuff. And he's telling me this story about this woman that comes out of his house, out of this house where out of nowhere, this abandoned house. This woman comes out and hands him a glass of lemonade. And I'm going, I know that story. I've heard that story. 2 weeks later on TV, I'm watching In Search Of, and what do you think I watch? The same
story. Yeah, I believe it.
And I called BS on him. I did. I didn't come out and say BS, but I said, dude, I've seen that on Unsolved Mysteries or something. Yeah.
And you know what's really funny, Paul, is that people don't understand how much energy it takes for this garnet to materialize anything, much less to give you a glass of lemonade. It's like, are you kidding me? You know, that's it's
Yeah.
totally unrealistic. And but I think it's
Only
funny. It's like I
the
can't even
only
come up with my original ghost story.
the only one that does this, and they don't do it. The goddess Pele, you
Mm-hmm.
know, from the volcano, and she'll
Right
come
out of
up and
Hawaii.
ask you for a glass of water.
Right.
And if you give her a glass of water, she'll save your house.
Right. Right.
But you
Exactly.
notice the story never aired on the news. All the people's houses that were saved this last summer.
Right when Hawaii was, yeah. What happened? I didn't hear about that.
You didn't hear about the volcanic
Oh no, no, no!
activity?
But what you were saying that people's houses were saved because of.
Them giving glasses of water to Pele?
Oh no, I hadn't heard about
You
that.
didn't hear that side of the story?
No,
That's not newsworthy.
unfortunately,
You
no.
look at a photographic picture and there's lava all around the house,
Yeah.
but the house is right there. Well, okay, how do you think that happened? Just how do you think that happened?
Good
There's
question.
only one explanation, and
Okay.
that's that these stories about Pele are real.
Okay. And I
You
imagine,
know,
I'm hoping that there's people there that remembered, like, I think this is what I need to do. Otherwise, my house is toast, literally and figuratively.
yeah.
I mean, I'm familiar with Pele, but I did not know that, and you know, coming from an area where we have natural disasters here in South Florida, and I've seen that firsthand, where you'll have some houses that are spared and others that are basically all you've got is the foundation of the house with a lot of junk around it. And
Sinkholes.
yeah, yes, I've seen that firsthand, absolutely. And I've had people tell me a lot of different. It's you know, last year we had hurricanes. We had a major one come through here, and one just give us a lot. And I had a lot of stories from people hearing a lot of weird noises and sounds, especially people that had properties that were on the outskirts, like woodland. I had a lot of stories from people come to me and say that they were hearing really unusual howlings and noises coming out of there. And I was like, "Are you sure it wasn't the wind?" And they're like, "No." You know, I would tease them, "Are you sure?" And then they were. I mean, these are credible people that told me these stories, and it was more than one. And they didn't, you know, different people were telling me these stories. So, and then
Right.
we can get on to elemental spirits and so forth, as far as you know, we're talking this type of, you know, basically it's nature. It's like no stopping it when it's going to happen. And
Yeah.
and what you're talking is basically, if you want to look at Pele as a goddess, or is appeasement, because at the end of the day, it like puts us right back in our place. Like, you're only humans, and if
Well,
nature
my
is.
whole thing, I don't want to get into the religious
Oh
aspect
no,
of
no, no,
things.
no! But what I'm saying is sometimes we forget that we can get spanked really hard.
Well, yeah, we can.
We can get
But I
spanked
tend to
really
piss
hard.
people off a lot. So I don't go into politics. I don't go into
No,
religion.
I know. I know. But no, but what I'm saying is that a lot of times we forget that despite all our technology and stuff, when it comes right down to it, when you're talking natural disasters, we're basically hoping that we'll come out the other end of it. Uh, and it kind of like, because I think as humans sometimes of course we're at the top of the pyramid thing, and it's like not really, not really. And I think once you've had that firsthand experience in some type of natural disaster, if you do have metaphysical beliefs, like that's when you might have that firsthand experience that only you understand. Maybe like what you said, why your house gets spared, or you're warned to leave at a certain time, things of that nature. And I've heard stories along those lines as well. When you've got nothing
Right.
but intuition, maybe.
I'm a big believer in karma, though, too.
Yeah. Yes.
And the karma is, as far as I'm concerned, is very real, and
Absolutely.
it will get you. There's
Yeah.
nothing you can do about it. It's going to get you. I don't. So, but I'm not going to go any deeper than that because that brings religion into things,
I know.
and
I
we
know what you mean.
go.
And you know what? And sometimes, Paul, when we talk about karma, and like you said, sometimes you never know how it plays out for different people because you lose touch of, especially somebody that's done you wrong, for example, and you never know what happens to some certain people down the line. But yeah, you'd be surprised if you ever able to glimpse or find out. You do understand exactly what you're talking about as far as karma is concerned. That can play out in a really weird and unusual ways, even if it takes years for it
Oh yeah.
to happen. Which sounds like maybe you've had some examples firsthand in your own personal
I ain't
life.
talking about those. I'm
Yeah,
not
okay.
going.
Well, let me ask you, and I'm going to ask you, and I don't know if you've had any guests that have talked, because I'm sure you've heard when you were talking about Sedona and stuff like that, and I'm sure you've heard of Skinwalker Ranch up in Utah.
Oh
Okay,
yeah.
and now basically it's on lockdown and nobody's allowed there. And what happened was some of the stuff that people that they were saying was like very unusual. And I mean, I researched myself, and I did find where way back before it was bought over by the last family that was there, the Shermans, and they did have UFO sightings out there in that area. So it wasn't like something. You know how sometimes the first thing you're thinking, oh, was all this stuff contrived, to make it whatever, like sell a book or whatever the case might be. But no, in truth, lots of years before any of this happened, there was UFO sightings out in that area. And I looked, I did the research. It was written up, enough that it made the newspapers. How's that? Do you have any
Yeah.
theories as to what do you think is out there, or was out there?
For Skinwalker Ranch,
Mm-hmm. Is it?
well, no, not really. I know there's something there. What's out there, I'm not going to really discuss because people can't handle, and I know people say they can handle it. Oh, I'm going to go out and I'm going to look for dog man, or I'm going to go Bigfoot hunting, but they get scared of a little spider in their tub. You know,
Yeah, I
you
understand totally
know
what
what
you
I'm
mean.
saying?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the skinwalker that is the Native American skinwalker
Right.
is someone that becomes dark and has these magical powers
Mm-hmm.
because that's the route that they took, and they took a very dark route to get there.
Right.
Uh, but what people refer to as skinwalkers these days are what people refer a shapeshifter,
Exactly.
and I've had personal contact with shapeshifters,
Okay.
and some of them are my friends.
Okay.
Whether you want to believe that or not, I don't really care. I'm not going to sit here and bullshit you. But uh, skinwalkers stay away from. They try to just stay away from everybody because people are scared of their own shadow, and they're scared of anything that's not like them. It's always been the human way of things. So. And they're especially afraid of something that can take the form of anything that it wants to. I
Right.
mean,
Yeah, that's very scary.
one of my friends would come by and he'll soar by as an eagle, and the clue that it's not an eagle is the fact that it's twice the size of a freaking eagle. And
Okay.
those things are huge. He'll just swoop down and then he'll be gone.
Okay.
So let me know. And
Right. And I mean, supposedly, and the Ute Indians, which were the natives that basically they lived historically in that area, avoided that piece of land because it was supposedly used by the Navajo shapeshifters, which, from what I understand, even presently, a lot of these Native Americans, it's like, no, we're talking about everything except a shapeshifter. Like, they're like, no, we're not going there. We're not talking. We're not even bringing it up in
well,
conversation.
yeah, it's exactly the same as someone referring like I've heard the story of born again Christians doing this quite a bit, where they will call the devil in, an evil entity. They will call it in, and then they'll say, well, in the name of Jesus Christ, I tell you to leave. And the first few times they do it, they're able to make it leave.
Okay.
And then all of a sudden, no, it doesn't want to go, and it won't go. It doesn't matter what name you're using.
Right.
It's not going to go anywhere. You're stuck with it because you were messing with it, and you're playing with something you're not supposed to play with. Yeah. And they have to call the congregation in to help them.
And the congregation does it remotely because the congregation will not go to your house, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard of that, believe it or not. I've yeah.
So it's the same thing. You don't speak a Skinwalker is incredibly, a Native American Skinwalker is, I guess the way you can put it, is incredibly a nasty person.
Right.
To say the least. I mean, when you have to do things like kill a child or...
Yeah, I believe they had cannibalism, necrophilia. They were...
or do whatever you have to do to gain the access to be what you think you want to be for eternity, because nothing wants you.
Right.
I mean, which goes to open up another door that, it's like, okay, well, you would think hell would be the first thing that would accept something like that. Hell don't. Well, it's so bad. I mean, so.
Right. And I mean, I sometimes think, let's go on the basis of thinking that skinwalkers, whether you want to think of them as a spirit or humans that were practicing this very, very, dark, magic, were frequenting there because there's something there, whether it's a portal, a passageway, that's another thing that they say that you see a lot there, which is sightings of very unusual cryptids, like stuff that's like, where did this come from? Being witnessed by different people. Like, is that why they were there to begin with? Not the other way around. Those things didn't come through because of the shapeshifters. The shapeshifters were going to this piece of land because they recognized that there was something there, energy-wise, or whatever the case might be. That's why they were attracted to it to begin with. I mean, it's
Yeah. But you think of it as the same way that they did the Native Americans. Mm-hmm. They pushed them into nowhere. They kept pushing them into places that were nothing. Nobody wanted that land. Pushed it nowhere, and that's there's only so many places these things can hide. With Bigfoot, I think Bigfoot is the natural form of a human in the first place before its DNA was messed with by the Anunnaki to become what humans are now.
Yes. It's possible.
That's what I think.
I personally think that a lot of people sometimes that have cases that involve, let's say, elemental spirits, I think that normally, because like you said, since we're pushing out into areas that before were very rural, and we keep expanding and going into areas, that's when people sometimes have experiences, whether it's hunting or just weird stuff that happens on the land. It's because normally these spirits, they don't want to have anything to do with it. They're doing their thing. They're elemental spirits. They're tied to the land. Let's say, whatever, the river, the water. And we arrive there and we start basically something similar to, building, building dams, roads, all this stuff. And that sometimes we get some very unusual occurrences that are not tied into a human spirit, I guess is my point. And then good luck, like you could say, you can invoke whatever you want. You're going to have a tough time dealing with it.
You're going to have a real tough time.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Absolutely. And I've come across a few like that, which is, how do you, let's say if you want to go the route of religion, as far as a tradition or whatever, if you're talking something that's very ancient, predates Judeo-Christian and even a lot of other types of religion, how do you address something like that? How do you handle it? It's a tough call, let me tell you.
Well, the shaman, anyone in the occult who has been initiated, the whole point of initiation, people say, well, what do I want to be initiated for? Is because that way your name, they know who you are on the other side.
Yes. Yes, they do.
That's why a priest, a Christian priest, supposedly Catholic anyway. That's why they can do what they can do, is because what's the life on the other side knows who they are because they've been
Right.
initiated and given that right, and people understand who that is on the other side, and it gives you the authority to do the things that you do, where
But it's a
anything
double-edged
else.
sword, by the way.
Yes, it is.
And you know what I'm talking about, right? As far as being known.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah. That once that information is out, it's out. And I follow that. And I'm going to go with the Catholic religion because, they're they have a hard time convincing priests, especially when they're coming out of the seminary, newly minted priests, the few that there are, they have a hard time convincing any of them to be trained as exorcists because they don't want to do this. They understand. They just don't talk about it, but they understand very well what you just described.
Oh yeah. When you play with something like that, I mean, well, in the Kabbalah, for example, the Jewish side of things, which everybody says that Kabbalah is nothing more than numerology, and that's crap. The Kabbalah is the Jewish ritual magic.
Yes,
A
exactly.
side of it. Right, right. And you must be 40 years old before you can practice that according to Jewish law. And there's a reason for that. You have to be emotionally mature enough to be able to deal with that.
Yes.
And it's up to your teacher to even decide whether you can deal with that.
And
So
like you said, there's a reason because so you
a
don't cut and
rabbi,
run. In other words.
yeah, a rabbi is better than a Catholic priest when it comes to this kind of stuff
Well, it's
on the Christian side of things,
the
because a
mysticism.
rabbi
Yeah.
knows the down and dirty. The rabbi, it's like when you are a medical doctor, you have to know. People say, "Oh, well, there's white and black magic," and no, there's not. You have to know how much medicine it takes to kill somebody in order to only give them the proper amount of medicine
Right.
to not kill them. Or the whole thing with the gun. The gun doesn't kill somebody. The person holding that gun kills somebody. It's all on a person wielding whatever
The
that
intention.
the responsibility is held by the person practicing whatever they are practicing.
Yes.
And so, anyhow,
I know that you've got something that's going on with you, and I wanted to thank you, Paul, for taking this time and talk about this stuff, which I thought was super interesting, because I know that you must have a treasury of stories.
oh well, yeah.
All right. uh, but anyway, thank you so much for coming on the show. You've been absolutely wonderful. I'm going to have a link to your website and for the radio station, so that people could also listen to you. And if you said, I don't know how much you want to talk about it. You said that you were going to be doing something new, that you were working on something new. Do you want to talk about that or not yet?
Yeah. The name of the show is Into the Shadows, and
Okay.
it's going to be co-hosted by someone else who has a podcast on the station and
Okay.
on, well, yeah, her podcast. Can't think of the name of the other place that the podcast is. But Cisco Murdoch will be the co-host,
Okay.
and our show will be about anything and everything. It won't just be paranormal. We'll do paranormal stuff, but it's going to, if we want a cop on, or if we want a politician on to talk whatever, or whatever, the show's going to be about anything and everything. So
Right. Right. Which is, I think it's fascinating. Do you have a launch date, or is that still in the
no,
works?
it's holidays, and we had talked about doing something now, and it's like we're just too busy to do it.
Yeah, I
So
know. I know. Which is the way it
sometimes.
should be, by the way. For all those workaholics out there, it's like, stop. Stop for a
Well, yeah.
bit. Enjoy the
That's why
holidays.
for myself, I can decide when I want to work.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, it's, well, I'm going to keep an eye out for it. I want to wish you luck, though, on that project. And, like I said, I would love to bring you back and vice versa. And are you going to keep on with the Swamp Radio, or is that going to go away and you're just going to do Into the
Oh,
Shadows?
Black Swamp Radio's here to stay. I mean,
Okay.
it's been for 5 years or more, and it's there to stay. It ain't going anywhere.
Okay.
Uh, So, and it's got quite a bit of good indie music. I know people don't really like indie music, but that's too bad. I'm a musician. So I play indie music, and it's got my music on it, and I can make your ears go deaf when I sing. But,
It's like it is what it is, man. That's what happens when you're running the show. Isn't that a good thing? I
Exactly.
love
My
it.
own station, I can play my own stuff, and you got
That's
to deal
right.
with.
If you don't like it, turn it off. Yeah, let me tell you something. I totally get it. Better than you think. So again, Paul, let me let you go because I know that you have something that you need to do that's very important. We talked about that off air. Again, thank you so much, and happy holidays, happy New Year, many blessings
You
for
too.
you and your family.
You too.
Take
You
care.
have a good one, and thank you for having me on your show. And we'll
Absolutely, my
see you
pleasure.
back.
Take care. Bye bye. Isn't he a fascinating guy? Wow. I mean, I've talked to him a couple of times off air, obviously, but when I say he's got stories, he's got stories. He's got stories. And you want me to tell you why I know he's got stories? Because I, first of all, stories that you hear because he's been involved in the paranormal and on paranormal radio and stuff that you hear and like he said, he's aware of the BS meter going off, and I'm sure he's heard stories where he must be thinking, "What a load of this is." And by the same token, though, you hear stories that when you hear them, you're like, "Man, geez, God, this is real," and that's that makes you think. Plus, you can tell just by relating the stuff that he's talked about that he's had his own firsthand experiences. That story about the kitten was phenomenal. I think that's phenomenal because, like I said, a lot of the animal spirit ghost things that you hear, it's my little cat or my dog or whatever, or I felt my cat on my bed and or the dog. And remember, I'm an animal lover. I have 7 dogs. All my little dogs are napping around my chair right now. So I'm an animal lover. But a lot of the stories that you hear are from pets. And then you get this story, which is, I think, there's so much tied into it. And it, when he mentioned that when he would hear this story was when certain things were going on for him personally. And almost like I want to say, you've heard of people having crisis apparitions, but usually their apparitions sometimes are loved ones that have gone, either just died or, they have a family member that's passed on, but they've never really had any type of interaction, and then this family member will come to them, just give them like a reassurance, you're gonna be okay. But in this case, it's a kitten, and I mean I could dissect that with my psychotherapy hat till forever. Or, like what we were talking about, which is this tied into his totem as animal spirit? And for those of you who have beliefs along those lines, again, that's a whole different show when we talk about the symbology of certain animals. And he was talking about, of course, from the Egyptian pantheon of gods and goddesses, one of them, which is Bast, which is the cat. And as a matter of fact, not too long ago, I mean, there was always this belief that the Egyptians would mummify the cats, like household cats, not sacrificing these. But they found recently on a dig somewhere out there where there was like hundreds of cats that were pets, and the point being that they would usually mummify people and or things that were highly regarded, that were important, that you went into your afterlife. And these cats, household cats, were very important, and that's why, you would have there's the Bast, which was the goddess Bast. That's part of their pantheon. But anyway, could that what was going on with Paul? Who knows? Like I said, I'm sure he has other stories. And I think about the. I love that. I love that because a lot of people sometimes get caught up with the metaphysical, and it's all the metaphysical. And he might have thought, I'm having a metaphysical moment out here, God knows. But he didn't get distracted from realizing, you know what? Self-preservation, just in case this is not a spiritual animal screaming out there. This might be a for real one. Let me just get inside. hello. Okay, this is like sometimes people think that if they're doing a spirit quest or they're having a metaphysical moment, it's like, it's all good. Folks, no, it's not. It's not. And this is, this ties in if you are, well, your spiritual beliefs, or you've talked about it, heard about it, as far as animal totems, there's also people that would wear talismans, like let's say the claw of a bear or this or that to signify its strength, or whatever the case might be, that you wanted to, let's say the strength of that animal, you wanted to incorporate it, and you would wear some talisman. You have to understand that nature, animals, whatever the case might be, it can't, it's not controllable. I mean, there's a lot of strength there if that's what you're trying to draw on, okay? But it's also, you, it's not a quantity that you can control it and say, okay, I'm done now. That's why you got to be very respectful of it. And by this, believe it or not, I am not the type of person that I think Mother Nature's out to punish any of us. I don't. I don't. This thing is like Mother Nature's mad at you. I'm sorry, I don't believe that. I think Mother Nature is like, we're a blip on the radar. It's going to happen. And nature's like that. Animals are like that. Okay, sometimes we try to put human motivations and psychology and things into animals, and they don't. That's why sometimes when you see animals that kill another animal, or that's happened to me, that they killed one of my other, it's the nature that they don't see it as right or wrong or good and evil. They're just being true to their nature. And I think that sometimes, and let's get back to the metaphysical, when people are trying to identify or correlate between themselves and their totem, they don't realize this is the wild side. Yeah, you might be very admirable, but nature is about survival. If you're an animal, even plant life, it's about survival at all costs. And that can be very attractive if you want certain qualities. But the flip side of that is you have to be very respectful of it, because it's not going to work the way you want to, like between you and another human being. It's not. It really isn't. It really isn't. And when I made that reference, when people that have been subjected to living through natural disasters, which I have, I've lived here all my life in Miami, and we've had all versions of hurricanes, and I was here for Hurricane Andrew and had my roof blow off, and I had to stick my kids under a sofa, and that's a whole, And last year, where we had this hurricane come up through Florida, which was Irma and then Maria, and you realize at that moment that for all we think we're important, even with our technologies, we really aren't when it comes to the forces of nature. The best you can do is like have a plan and survive and protect yourself and your family or whoever's with you, so you can come out the other end and get on with life. But in that moment, okay, when you have 200-mile-per-hour winds screeching around your house, you kind of fade into insignificance, but we get carried away with that. So I think that is one of those things that sometimes we lose sight of in our everyday lives and modern, and and a lot of people that even say this thing about the paranormal, they poo-poo it, and I understand there's a lot of stories out there that it's like, are you kidding me? That's a load of But by the same token, there's still a lot about us and our world, what's seen and unseen, that is not explained. And a lot of us don't want to look any closer because it would kind of make us feel unsafe, because there's a lot of people that want to have it regimented. I want to know what are this is where I exist. Don't bring anything out, no weird stuff. Which is why I say that the day that they actually declare that UFOs are real, or ET's been coming home, there's going to be a few people going, running around like Chicken Little, because one thing is, it's a theory, or whatever you want to call it, despite all the videos. And then the actual admission by governments or whoever it might be, or somebody, one of them lands on the front lawn of the White House, whatever. It's like, okay, there's no denying it. You know, there's a portion of our population, besides the UFO stuff, just the paranormal or anything that they can't feel or touch. It's like, man, if it doesn't fit in here, and I don't want it to fit here, because then I'm going to have to think, what is my place then in all of this? And that there's a lot of edges to this which fall off into the fuzzy, misty, which I don't know what's there. Where does it go? What's out there? What's in there? What can come in? What can come out? And then, of course, which is, that's part of what I consider paranormal, and that's why I think it's so fascinating. Not only the hard facts, but also that there's a lot of things that not only do we not understand, that there's things out there that we don't even know about. That we don't even know about, either by choice or circumstance. And hoping in the future I want to do a lot of shows like that. And one of the things that that Paul was talking about when he's, you know, this new project that he's got going on, Into the Shadows, which is that I've had a lot of requests. You know, I've asked in the past, you know, folks, do you want to give me suggestions about themes or guests, or what do you want to talk about? And I've had a lot of people wanting not only to talk about UFOs and cryptids, but I have a lot of people, and I'm going to use this word lightly. I don't mean it in a derogatory sense, but I've had a lot of people say, oh, I would wish you discuss some conspiracy theories out there. And by this, I don't necessarily mean government conspiracies, even though the government's tied sometimes, but we're talking stuff. I've had requests for manipulation of the weather, different things, you know, behind the scenes things that sometimes are not apparent. So I'm going to see if I can dig somebody up. So, you know, like I've had requests along those lines. And the truth is, I do want to bring people on, but I also, how can I say, I want to bring somebody that's halfway credible, somebody that's going to talk about something that partway makes sense. Okay, that when you're listening to them, you're gonna going, huh? What? I mean, there's nothing wrong with huh, what? But I want to talk to somebody like, hey, you've got a theory about whatever it is, this conspiracy. For example, let's go down that road. But you're basing it on what observations? On what this, and this. Okay, I could buy that. But there's a lot of people out there sometimes that have theories where it's like, okay, you came up with this theory based on what, a dream you had? Where would you get this from? Did you observe something? Have you done research? Where are you getting this? Where are you linking this event to this event or that person? How did you get where you're at now? So anyway, I'm working on it. And there's a lot of things I'm working on. But anyway, guys, again, like I said before, my prior show, probably by the time you hear the show, since it's a little bit staggered, holidays will have passed. But regardless, Happy New Year 2019. Happy holidays, even though they've passed. Wishing you the best for you and your family. Good luck. I think we have a lot of interesting things coming up personally and on a bigger scale for 2019. And even though we're very resistant to change, I think it's very exciting. Yeah, like I say, hang on tight. You know, like when you're going on that roller coaster, you know, and you're going down that thing and your hair's going, yeah. It's like, I love it. You know, at the end, you're like, in that moment, it's like, oh my God, my butt's off the chair. But then when you get off, you're like, let's do that again. At least that's me. That's what I like. That's what I like. It's scary and change and what's next, and this is something else. But then when you come off, you're like, huh, okay. Let me take a sip of water. Let's do it again. So anyway, guys, again, thank you for being part of my audience and sharing this time. Go to MiamiGhostChronicles.com if you want to download the MP3 file for the show. If you want a link to the different podcast platforms that you're going to find me on, also links to the video on YouTube. If you're one of my true believers, you can submit a story there. Please submit your story. Do not be shy. Whatever it is. I want to hear about it. I want to read it. I want to take yourself. Whatever. Want to be anonymous? I can do that too. Don't forget about me. So take care, guys. See ya.